Hello and welcome to another episode of Property-Pxrn Stars, the premium property podcast, brought to you by your hosts David Lindley.
And I'm Matt Giggs.
And today our guest, our Property-Pxrn star, is none other than Elaine Penhaul, the director and co-founder of Lemon and Lime. Now, Lemon and Lime is a very interesting business that's been around the industry for a while. And I think that its position and the industry that it's in is becoming increasingly important for agents, especially in the premium market. So firstly, hello, welcome for coming.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank
coming.
you. So, okay, first of all, let's talk about what Lemon and Lime does, what the industry is that you're in does for estate agents and for homeowners as well.
So Lemon and Lime does what we have always referred to as professional property presentation and what we refer to now as home staging or staging, because that's the Google search term that people will put in to find us, because it's a very, very common thing to do ahead of a property sale in the States and has been for 20, 30 years, in Australia particularly, and also now in parts of Europe. It's been quite a slow thing to take off in the UK, but makes complete sense.
We're going to get
doesn't
there
it?
today.
Well, it just makes complete sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you wash the car before you take it to the dealers. You know, but lots of people, both homeowners and agents, have only recently begun to cotton on to the idea that the better you market a property, the more likely you are to get a great sale.
Because you and I was thinking about this the other day, we probably first started working together 5, 6 years ago, maybe even more. And I feel like single-handedly, you've done a lot for your industry in bringing it to the fore in estate agents' minds as well. Certainly I've seen from the outside looking in on kind of, to an extent, both industries, where staging and styling has come from being pretty niche to increasingly commonplace for premium properties especially. What's that journey been like for you? That's been a lot of hard yards and a lot of relationship building to have brought it up to where it is today, right?
Yeah, but luckily, and I think it's something that I have been able to bring to my business and to a kind of a fledgling industry as a whole. My background prior to this, I've been very lucky. I'm very old and I've had a lot of careers, and my career immediately before this one was in business coaching. So I was working primarily, in fact, with police forces latterly to drive culture change through coaching and mentoring and, you know, all the associated things. And in order to drive culture change, there has to be top down and bottom up. And I was training that, teaching that, living and breathing that with lots of different businesses for many, many years before I fell into this industry. And so it seemed to me our mission as a business is to change the face of UK property marketing, because most of it is still, it's better than it was, but a lot of it is still, give me a polite word, not very good.
Average.
Average, thank you, Matt. It's pretty average. And so my intention was knowing I've got to drive it from the top, so building the relationships with people like you know, people that were CEOs of the kind of agencies that we wanted to work with. Also, I've been able to build relationships with Property-Pxrn, for example, with the Guild of Property Professionals, with the people who kind of drive the industry, the estate agency industry as a whole. My team will tell you that what I actually do most of the time is drink coffee. So I'll phone people and say, hey, I'd love to grab a coffee with you. Is that okay? And then I disappear off and they see me, you know, if they're lucky at the end of the week. And also then, of course, so that's my top-down approach. And then the bottom-up approach is very much about talking to home sellers. So the people that are going to use both the estate agents and the staging service that we offer, so that the agents, the estate agents, are then kind of squished in the middle of this sandwich. They're being told by their CEOs or by the bodies that do qualifications or are running conferences and all that kind of thing, that actually getting a property ready properly before you launch it to market, including the staging that we would bring, is a really good idea. And then they're being asked by the homeowners, hey, what do I need to do to maximize myself, to get it ready? So, and the bottom-up approach has been the book. So my first book was published in October 2020, Sell High, Sell Fast. And we give that out. I've given it to over 1,000 estate agents, and it sells on Amazon, and we give it to sellers that we're working with as well. So that's the kind of the bottom-up drive, and along with, just lots more conversations, until eventually the agents will be kind of squished in the middle, and they'll decide, oh, I know what we'll do.
In what decade do you think they'll come? Because I think, I work with agents' mindset. So for me, I think everything is you can tell an agent's success by their mindset, the way they think about things, the way they behave. It's an interesting paradigm that we've had in a estate agency. And I noticed Harry Hill was being announced as a chairman for a self-employed model just this morning. But I remember when Rightmove was an idea that Harry and another guy called Anthony Eakins and the guys at Countrywide had back in 1999, 2000. And it's just made me think, whilst I'm sitting here listening to you, has Rightmove conditioned agents to behave in a certain way that means they really do solely rely on Rightmove for the sale rather than the marketing of a house that should rely on finding the right buyer? And when the buyer arrives, it's, that it all adds up, because there's so much to do with emotion when you're buying a property. The logic's the price, right? But the price really comes second to the emotion. Is that your approach? Is it about getting that emotion through marketing rather than the price? Because I think sellers, more often than not, are finding they're getting hit hard for 5%, 10% reductions before even considering the prospect of staging their house or making it present better in the climate.
And I think there's a whole lot in that.
Sorry, it was a bit of a jumble. I tend to go around different directions.
That's okay.
If you can capture what I've
Let's
just said.
Let's just pick up the last bit around the staging and the emotional connection, creating the emotional connection. And that's absolutely what the staging does, because any purchase, and the bigger the purchase, the more important it is a kind of a connection between head and heart, essentially. And probably about 10% of people are primarily head thinkers, and the rest of the population are primarily heart thinkers. And they will, and that doesn't mean that they don't do both, but that they do one or the other first.
Yes.
And I think for Rightmove, what Rightmove did is really, really fascinating, I think, in psychological terms, because suddenly every property was out there, and you could go into every property pretty much as much as you like. And of course, COVID has dramatically changed how properties are listed on Rightmove for many agents, not all of them. And being able to see into a property before you actually go means that the first viewing is done online, which it wasn't previously. And if that first viewing doesn't really capture the emotional connection, then somebody won't do the second viewing, which is the one where they actually walk through the door of the house. And then maybe the third viewing, which is the one where they put the logic
and the emotion
together and make an offer.
So I think I'm going to kind of grab my point that I wanted to make. Sorry, David gets used to this, to be honest, and so will anyone listening. But I think Rightmove's not a great place to achieve the best price. That's my point. If you look at like Rolex, you have to go on like a waiting list. You've already bought the Rolex before you go on the waiting list, if that makes sense. And I think with a property, you think how much emotion goes into living and selling and buying a property, and how it feels, and that significance and that egotistical, if you like, purchase that people make is justified by logic. And I wonder how much agents don't really focus on that, because they'll go, well, as long as it's on Rightmove, it hasn't sold 6 weeks later, we need to drop the price. We've all been guilty of it because we use that as a steer. But I'm sitting here thinking creatively now, as I do with my brain, thinking, wow, imagine if there wasn't a price listed for certain houses and it was presented in this format and people were taking round, I wonder how much value they would put on the house without it being listed on a portal. And that's about,
I think
it's about really driving value and the emotional side of the purchase over the logic, which is when people go into Rightmove, they go price, area then price. So it's an interesting shift that you're looking to make.
I think it's really interesting, and what you're talking about there, Matt, I think is almost next level. I think that getting decent photos on Rightmove would be a great first step.
Or replying to the inquiries.
To the inquiries, but from a staging point of view, agents now will talk about doing professional photography, but it is utterly pointless sending in a professional photographer if nobody has given the seller any advice about how best to present the property ready for the photos being taken. And I think that would be a fantastic first step if that was happening universally. And then the point around driving that value without the listing on Rightmove and and some agents are doing it now. The coming soon.
And I'm not knocking
staff
Rightmove,
thing.
by the way, but I just think it's conditioned certain behaviours.
I think Rightmove is a great tool, badly used right now, and I don't think that's that's just the way things are.
So I do want to come back to a point that you've made, but just to get there, I'm going to ask a separate question. So this is very basic. Tell for the uninitiated, what's the difference between interior design and staging and styling for a property?
Okay, so interior design takes into account the person living there already and asks questions of their taste, how they're going to use the house, what they like, and then an interior designer will take all of that into account and then put together a scheme that the homeowner is going to absolutely love. When we're staging a property, staging is property marketing. It's not interior design. We have striven for a number of years to really separate it out and be very clear.
Different, isn't it?
It's property marketing. The first thing that my team will do when we've seen a property is to assess who the buyer's going to be. And then anything that we take in or any of the presentation is geared towards the buyer. And quite honestly, if the seller doesn't really like it, we don't mind that much because the chances are high that the seller isn't the same demographic as the buyer. And therefore, in our world where we're
stages of
different life stages,
So they might have been similar to when they bought it.
Exactly. But of course, trends move on. What we want to do is, staging is to some extent trend driven because what we want to say is this is the type of interiors that young professional couples are falling in love with right now, or that somebody who is looking for a family home moving out of London, which has been a really common theme over the last 3 or 4 years. But this is what they're likely to be looking at. So they're not looking for, kind of what was traditionally country living, the kind of the mud and the, all the, all that stuff. But they're looking for the country living idyllic version, the very stylized version of country living now. And so taking a seller who's lived in their country home for 20, 30 years, to understand that now their buyer is probably somebody who's moving out of a much more suburban or a city living into the country, and they've got to convince them. That's a really big gap. But staging is a very good tool to bridge that gap.
Brilliant. Okay, so what I want to try and do is get into the how of this a bit, because I think for a lot of agents that this podcast is designed for agents who are either in or want to be in that premium property space. And I think it goes without saying that staging and styling is associated with that for good reason, because there's a higher value asset that we want to maximize the price of. And sometimes it lends itself to that market more. So how do agents go about this then? And to ask a question to kick that off, is this something, and this is what you said, is staging and styling something that can be brought in to instead of a price reduction, or is it something that must be brought in at the start of a property's marketing strategy, if you like?
Yes, to both of those. In an ideal world, and increasingly it now happens, that agents who really are setting out to maximise the price, the value of their seller's biggest capital asset in most cases. The agents who are switched on are going to get the marketing right to start with. So right from the very beginning, they're doing all the things that are associated with great marketing, including the staging. And they're not in such a rush to launch the property to market because, you know, it's September and it's the best time before Christmas, you know, or we need to get on the market because it's the spring. You know, none of those things are as important as getting the marketing absolutely right from the launch date. So the switched on agents, the agents that have experienced the value of staging once, will pretty much 99 times out of 100 launch a property to market with the staging in place. The agents who are much less convinced about it won't stage, and then what happens at the 6-week or the 8-week review is that the homeowner will call in 3 or 4 different agents, and out of those 3 or 4 currently, still 3 out of the 4 will say, it's been overvalued, we need a price reduction. The 4th agent will say, I don't actually think it's your price that's the problem. I think you're not yet attracting the right group of people because it doesn't look right. Let's get it staged. Let's leave the price the same and see what we can do. And in those cases, we have got hundreds of case studies where that's been the right strategy. And of course, you know, people say to me, well, with staging, that it's a cost up front and there's no guarantee that it's going to work. And so I'm saying to them, well, if you do a price reduction, and in our end of the market, the first price reduction is at least 50 grand.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, you're taking £50,000 off the price, there is still no guarantee that you're going to find the right buyer because it still looks the same and you're not drawing in anybody else. And in many cases, 50,000 doesn't even make the difference in a right roof bracket in the premium end of the market.
Well, it's really good. It's such a good point because I train agents how to achieve higher fees and so on and so forth. And in a market where people are taking 5% off of their value and they're quibbling over 0.5% on a fee, it's another justification or it's another value add. So how do you add that value? Sitting here right now, there'll be agents thinking, okay, how much does it cost? Right? Because that's the first thing they do when it comes. The emails I get in when they go, can you come and train? It's always, and how much does it cost? And then I go, well, what are you looking for? We want to be trained on fees. And you're like, well, the first place is you don't understand value.
For sure.
Or
return on investment.
And it's not knocking them, but it's a mindset thing. It's a little bit like mates rates. You know, mates should support you, not try and skin and bone you to the ground. You know, so it's a mindset thing. So from an investment point of view, that argument or that positional statement that you've just made, I think it's quite powerful actually, because if I was a 3rd or 4th agent going out to a listing stand, you and Sorrel and right, you've got 4 weeks left with X and Y. I don't think it's the price you should be doing first. I think it's this.
Yes.
I think there's not an agent around the country right now that's listening to this thinking, how do I go about doing that? So the how.
Yeah.
Let's dig a bit deeper.
So let's take that then. Let's do that.
That's
so
a scenario.
Yeah.
I'm Matt, taking on £1 million buyer's line property in this area. Go, great, okay. How do the numbers of that work then? Is it vendor paid? Does Matt pay out of his fee? Is it upfront marketing contributions from the vendor? How does it all work? Because there's got to be paid for somewhere, hasn't it?
Yeah. Or I can't feed the kids. As it were. So let's just take that back half a step. So Matt, you're now going out to see a property that's been on the market with a different agent for 8 weeks. And the seller has called you and said, look, come and talk to me. I'm not happy. It's not selling. Come and tell me what you think. You don't know whether they've invited out every agent in the area, but you're imagining that they probably have. So you're going, it's now, what day are we on? Monday. So you're going out on Wednesday. So on Monday, as you've booked that appointment, you call me or you call one of my team or you send over the Rightmove link, because as long as it's listed already, I can come back to you, or one of my team can come back to you within 24 hours and say, right, this is what we would suggest is the conversation that you have about the presentation, and this is the likely cost of that if they need us to be involved. And then you're going to that valuation, not just equipped with the fact that you're going to change the presentation, or you're going to suggest the presentation's changed as opposed to the fee, as opposed to the price, but you've also got the likely costs of that. You're already equipped with that. So now you have the conversation, and let's say for the sake of argument that we have said, we can talk to the vendor and talk them through how to do it themselves. So if it's an occupied property and really it's tweaks, and they haven't got any budget at all, so things that would fall into that category, sometimes messy divorces, for example, where they can't access funds, sometimes just for all kinds of reasons. If somebody's got a really bad negative equity in the property, there's no funds up front. So there are all kinds of ways that we can work with them to get the presentation done better without making a charge. So we'll do a WhatsApp consultation on the phone, for example, and give a whole load of advice, either to the seller or to you as the agent. So you're getting a better presented property, hasn't cost anybody anything. But next time, you're going to come to me first, because now you've got an unfurnished property and it needs furnishing. If the property, if you go out to it, and let's say for the sake of argument, it's on the market at 1.5 million and it's empty, and the agent previously hasn't thought to get it furnished, or worse, they've had virtual staging done. So that the minute, virtual staging is a fantastic tool used in the right way. But if the property is completed, if it's a real live property that you can walk into, open the door. When you open the door, you want to go, wow. You want to go. You don't want to go, oh.
It was all make.
So it's a great tool for off-plan. It's a great tool for showing possible renovation. It's a great tool for lots of things.
But you would limit the use of it
I would absolutely limit the use of it.
Because it's a bit like the wide-angle lens in a estate agency when people were trying to improve their photography. People would walk into a room and go, wow, this is half the size of what I was looking for. And you've almost just completely shot the sale down.
Yeah. So they might as well turn around to go back out.
It's a waste of everyone's time.
It's a waste of everybody's time and money. So let's say for the sake of argument, in a £1.5 million property that I've said to you, look, to fully furnish that, it's going to cost you £10,000. So you now go to the seller and say, right, well, it's going to cost us £10,000 to get it fully furnished, but it can be done next week because we work very quickly. Seller goes, ooh, that's quite a lot of money, and I'm not sure. And you say, well, okay, that's fine. But the alternative is I'm going to now chop it down to 1.25 so that you drop down into the
thresholds.
Drop down in the thresholds. Which would you rather?
Yeah.
Well, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? £10,000 to get it looking amazing so people can really visualise and feel when they walk through the door themselves living there, or you take £250,000 off it.
So in that scenario, the vendor pays for it?
Yes. So still in this country, the vast majority of the time, not every time, but the vast majority of the time, the seller will pay for the staging, and we will charge that as a business. We have a policy where we charge that up front. So we've been paid by the time it comes onto the market. For the first, if it's fully furnished or if it's a part furnished, we've been paid for the rental up front. However, particularly if it's an agent that we know it's a good relationship with the agent that we've got, if there's a cash flow issue for the seller, and let's face it, in the end of the market that we're working in, that kind of cash isn't often causing a cash flow issue.
No.
But if for all the reasons that cash flow is very tight, then we will work with the agent and with the seller to say, okay, pay some of it up front, and then let's just make an agreement where we get the rest on completion. Yeah.
And is there, premium property means different things to different people in different parts of the country, or indeed the world, of course.
Yeah.
Is there a price point where this is most appropriate for you? What's your typical price property that you deal with?
Okay, so for us, our average property is $1 million. The staging cost between 750 and 2 million, because that's the bracket that we chop it into to work out all our stats.
Sure.
The average cost of the staging in that bracket is 0.6%. Now, clearly that includes the occupied properties, which don't need very much, and the 10,000 square foot that need everything, need my entire warehouse emptying into them, more or less.
That's really interesting that you do it
of
on a percentage, like an estate agent would, like an estate agent's
Yeah,
fee,
we
you say
don't charge
0.6.
it on a percentage. We don't charge it on a percentage because it depends on the, so, but I'm, as you know, David, I'm a mathematician by background, so I have stats about what we do coming out of my ears. If somebody asks me where the blue cushions are, I'm going, how would I know? It's not really my thing. I've got a great team that do that, but I'm really interested in the return on investment, how much it costs, where it adds most value, all of that. In our under 750 bracket, the average cost of staging is 1%. So it's still a very small percentage compared to what you were mentioning earlier, the 5% or even the 10% price drop.
Yeah. Well, am I right in thinking, Matt, that you need a 5% price drop for Rightmove to count it as a reduced, yeah?
Yeah, I think for it to have any impact and for it to actually stand out to a different crowd, which is the whole idea.
So if you put it in that context then, 0.6 versus 5%, it's a really interesting strategy when that conversation happens.
For certainly ones that have been on the market.
Yeah.
I think for launching, and a lot of agents probably find this challenge, is that, they want to rush it on. I want to get it up for sale, get the stat on the pie chart, and I've been there. And sometimes I have that own internal battle that's like, I want to get it up for sale. But actually, when we talk about if it was our home, what would we do? That's the question we always ask ourselves. It's actually, no, you need to do it right. I mean, I've been to one this morning. It's photographs on the outside are being done this Friday. Inside's not going to be ready for another month. So it's like, it's part of the process of getting the best photos at this time of the year, that kind of stuff. But I'm sitting here now thinking, oh, there's an opportunity, you need an ambassador, but the point is you're right. It's how far do we need to be going now for our clients? Because if you talk about equity now, equity is being reduced, whether we like it or not. We've been through a bubble period, and the bubble period's burst. Yep. What's left is probably similar to where we were in 2019, on average, in terms of house prices.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the speed to market, I mean, it's a very, very clear non sequitur, isn't it? In terms of equations, your speed to market does not equal value. Speed to sale.
Yeah, or best price.
Or best price, or any of those things. So slowing down that speed to market can then very significantly speed up the speed to sale. You saw last week the gap graph that Chris Watkin posted, for example, where there's this big gap between what actually is listed and what then is completed on. Well, the bit where we can narrow that gap is getting that offer agreed really quickly. And that's just so important.
And if you talk about marketing, I mean, you're talking about the emotional side of understanding the buyer. And I think, again, it's something as agents, we've all got to learn the fact that if you're marketing anything in any sector, in any industry, you need to know who you're trying to market to. Who's the ideal client here, and actually working back from there through the staging process, and then taking that and then using the tools that are out there today to put it under the nose of the right buying market.
Yeah.
Is that something you do as well, or is it just is it just the home staging process that you take control of, or do you then help with the launch of the home online?
We do whatever our agents need us to do.
I was just, because
We absolutely.
I'm asking the questions for the viewer, right?
Yeah,
So
we aim to, because I strongly believe that every business, and we're all in a business of relationships, and we will work with our sellers and with our agents to make sure that whatever happens, that property is launched and it's going to get the best impact and it's going to get the most interest, and then the buyer at the right price. Now, we are unusual in the staging world in as much as we work with the agents and the homeowner to do anything it needs to get it ready for market. So as part of that, we'll decorate, we've re-rendered properties, we've relaid drives, we've done plumbing, carpentry, absolutely, you name it. We will get all of that done ahead of a sale. And because I've got contractors at my fingertips, because nobody has contractors at their fingertips, but it means that we can get all of that done in quick time. So that you talk about that kind of length of time of it coming to the market. Generally, if it's just staging, we do it within 2 weeks. If it also includes some decorating, my decorators, my team will generally go within 2 weeks to make a start, and then it just depends on the scope of that. If it's only a few days, and then we're liaising with them and we just do the staging straight on the back of it.
This is a perfect segue for story time. So I'm somewhat dating this podcast because today Adam Lascelles, who runs By Design in Lincolnshire, he's just launching a property to market called Long Hills Hall, which I know that you and he have been collaborating on for some time, and there's a really interesting story in there. So tell us a story of how that property, of your involvement in that property, what you've done and how it's come to market today.
That is an amazing property. It's very rare. I have a very nice house and I see a lot of very nice houses. And Adam called me about that one a year ago and said, I need you to have a look at this because I don't know what to do with it. And we had a number of conversations, and then I was introduced to the seller who is abroad, and he commissioned my team this year to help get it ready for sale because it had been on the market at a significantly lower price than it's being relaunched and was failing to attract the right level of interest. It just wasn't getting offers at the right value, and it's an incredible house. It's like a mini stately home, basically. And I walked in through the door and went, oh, wow, because it's got fantastic space. And it was really sad. It was really, really unloved. So for 3 months, we've had decorators, carpenters, plumbers. We've done all the outside. We've repainted the outside, done minor repairs that it's needed. We've done carpets because it had this just incredible, hideous red carpet right the way through. Well, you can't photograph red for love nor money. Anything that's red has to go. So we've recarpeted, and repurposed the rooms so that instead of this, 12, 13 bedroom house, nobody needs 12 or 13 bedrooms, for God's sake. I've got 4 children and I still don't need 13 bedrooms, but it just needed rooms repurposing. So it's now got a cinema, it's got a games room, it's got a huge home office, it's got a gym, so we reimagined the space so that now it looks like something, and it's literally taken from the point where we started, and it has been massive work. It's taken 4 months from the start of that to getting in the last kind of coffee cup on the coffee table. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Exactly. We were up there together the other week, and it was a real collaboration of companies. There was yourself, there was Adam, there was Matt and Chris from PVS Media, there was photographers there was even local hamper companies there as well, throwing the kitchen sink at this, let alone the social media and the press from it. It's astonishing.
Can I just add something to that as an agent, because I'm the agent in the room, I suppose, is that when it comes to negotiation on the value, when the right buyer is introduced, it's much easier to get the best offer from the right buyer, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So you've also won trust as an agent, because you've come at it from not just slashing the price by 100,000 or 400,000 or 300,000, whatever it might be, in whatever price range. You're actually coming at it from a different angle. I can't help with my mind the way I think. I've had 3 or 4 thoughts going through my mind, which I'm sure a lot of agents would if they're listening to this, is how we position this with the clients. But it's all about the outcome, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the vision of the sale that you focus on, and the steps to get there. Because you've got pathway A, which is slash the price by 250,000, or pathway B, which is invest 20,000 and maybe achieve £200,000 more, or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a really. What's the biggest objection you get from agents looking to take that on? Because like you said, you go top down, bottom up, and there's this wonderful crowd in the middle, us estate agents. What's the biggest challenge to get this point across, would you say, that you have?
I think that's a really good question, because it's changing. It used to be, I can't possibly have that conversation with my seller and tell them that their house isn't right, because I'll lose the instruction. And estate agents are afraid of 3 things. One, that they're going to lose the instruction by saying, your house doesn't look great, we need to get it sorted. 2, that staging is going to cost too much. And 3, that it's going to take too long.
Yeah.
And those are the 3 main objections. These days, we come across any and all of those less. Not that we don't come across them, of course we still do, but we come across them less. And the question from agents now is, how do I use staging? How do I use your service to add value to what I'm doing? Because of course, with the way the property market is right now, agents are afraid that they're not going to get instructions. They're afraid that they won't get the best listings. They're afraid that they won't be able to charge the highest fees, or the fees that really reflect the value that they're putting in. And they are more increasingly looking for ways of adding value. So the questions that we get now are much more about, how do we work with you, rather than
we can't do it.
We can't do it. Yeah,
so
which is
the
great.
mindset's changing.
The mindset is changing. It hasn't changed completely, but COVID went quite a long way, because of course what we've ended up with is far more self-employed models, far more agents who are really thinking out of the box and know that they're going to think out of the box, and they want to know how to do that better. And I think that's helping. You must see it from your
I do.
view.
And I think the industry, is developing a better mindset around the outcome as opposed to the income for the agent.
Yes. Yeah.
Because the income comes quicker if you get it online quicker. That's how they think.
Well, except that, it doesn't, because if it doesn't sell, you don't get the income. So what we're actually doing, the agents are getting the income more quickly, because it's sold more quickly, and they've got it at a higher value. So
I was thinking about this, talk about Chris Watkins. He shares some stats about being the agent again. And how many people don't go back to an agent because they told them a price and then they changed the price pretty swiftly into their relationship. And it probably felt that was always going to be the case, because it's only at the end when you experience that, not at the start, right?
Yeah.
Because you're giving the agent, it's got the trust, starts well, it's like a 10 out of 10, then you don't really hear a lot. And then when you do hear from them, it's about dropping the price. And we've been guilty of that, because we sometimes have the wrong conversations at the wrong time with the wrong people, and there's different variances there. But I think you're right. I think there's a mindset shift in the country, and it's developing that more outcome-driven mentality.
Yeah, I mean, certainly since the 8 years that we've been in business, it's changed dramatically. The early conversations were just like, I couldn't even get through to agents. They wouldn't talk to me. There was this kind of wall of people that were going, no, our sellers won't be interested in that. No. Whoever it was, the valuer or whatever, they won't be interested in that. Seriously? But now, people, the calls come to us. I don't chase.
Well, I was going to ask this, because like I said, we started working together however many years ago it was, and things of the mentality around this has changed so much. And then when we caught up at Simon Ledbetter's marketing event, you said something to me that really surprised me, which was how far it had come. So now sellers are coming to you before the estate agent.
I mean, we get now on our kind of lead generation, whether it's through estate agents, and then we get a lot of people that come to us direct. And we're probably getting 50 or 60 inquiries a month that are coming from sellers with no agent involved yet. And the reason for that, there are two reasons for that. One, because staging generally and getting good marketing generally is a little bit more kind of up there, you know, things like Selling Sunset, for example, or, you know, whatever the most recent versions of those are, you know. But,
where they don't actually know how to sell anything, really.
No, but they talk about getting the
things.
presentation right and things look right. And that makes people think, oh, I wonder if anybody does it in this country. So then they start Googling. And then the second thing is we get a lot of inquiries from people selling their home who will phone us or message us and say, look, I knew people like you must exist, but I asked my estate agent and they wouldn't talk to me properly about the presentation. They just said it was fine, let's get it on the market. And sellers, particularly in the premium end of the market, particularly where we're working, are intelligent, professional people. They don't want to be fobbed off by an agent who says, it's fine, love, just get it on the market, it'll all be all right. You know, they don't want that.
No, there's so much gold in there. And I think we live in an aesthetically driven society. If you think social media, take Instagram for argument's sake, where I posted this morning, picture of myself. Sorry about that, everyone. But it's, you know, imagine that you're putting your house on the market, people are going to see it. How do you want them to see your home? So there's a lot of emotion there. There's a lot of like, imagine if you had it like this. Imagine if this is what we did. How would you feel about it going to launch? You know, it's quite powerful if you really get under the skin of it.
Do you have any advice for agents on how, if there is like emotional trepidation of having that conversation with a vendor, this is the house they've lived in, and I guess this is normally more often the case than not. If we're having this conversation, they've lived in the house for 15 years and they think it's absolutely fine, but trends have moved on, the market's moved on, and they can't see it. It's often the case, isn't it? In your own home, you can't see what's not right about it because you're living in it.
Yeah.
How would agents best have that conversation with the vendor to overcome that emotional hurdle?
The way it works best, that the agent doesn't have the conversation. What the agent says is part of our value add as an agent. We work with Lemon and Lime, you know, multi-international award winning, blah, blah, blah. Here's a copy of Elaine's book. You know, they do all of that. And because we work with them all the time, one of Elaine's team will have a conversation with you about your presentation, because they do it for all our sellers. You know, we're not singling you out. They do it for all our sellers and give top tips. And then if there's anything that they think they can realistically help with, then she'll talk to you about that. They'll talk to you about that and tell you how much that's going to cost. But it's just what we do as an agency, that you won't get this from, you know, anybody else that's coming in.
It's a value add.
We do it, so it's a value add.
Yeah.
May I pass on your contact details?
Can I just say, I was talking to these clients this morning about this, and there's a quote that I found on a dressing room wall at Cambridge United when I was 14 or 15, and it's stuck with me ever since, and it's you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And you think about the first impression being really important from a buyer's perspective. You know, that's the first time they'll get to see it. And it's more often than not on a portal or a video or a social media post or something along those lines. And how much do people spend if they don't get the right first impression? Time looking at something. You know, what they say, 10, 15 seconds if it's a video.
Scroll.
They flick by it. But if you can capture that, how powerful is that? And it's, it's a really interesting...
There was that great article, wasn't there, in the Estate Agent Today a couple of weeks ago that said 59% of people will flick straight past a listing if the first photo doesn't jump out at them. Well, 59, so nearly 2/3
Of your
of
buying
people,
audience.
of your buying audience, if the first photo doesn't jump out at them, they've gone,
So
done.
but this is where I'm my brain's, as you can tell, is going in overdrive. But then you think, a lot of conversations today, there'll be thousands of conversations with clients today saying you need to come down to the next threshold today because 2/3 of the people have swiped left.
But 2/3 of the people,
or scrolled up,
2/3 of the people aren't going to swipe right just because you've dropped the price by
I know,
50 grand
but it
or
goes back.
whatever.
The house still looks the same, right?
I still look the same, so I'm still going to swipe past it because I still don't like it.
So
It might be cheaper, but I still don't want to live there.
So it must be a multitude of answers to this, but I suppose when you stage a home, it's staged until sale agreed.
Yes, usually.
Or is it just staged
yes, usually.
just for photographs?
So,
and then
no, we don't.
you clear it out, and then once you've gone, see you later on.
No,
Defeats
we
the
don't.
object.
Yeah, it defeats the object. We don't do that, because I think it's pointless.
No value.
No,
It's like the
there's no value in
CGI,
it.
but real life.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just a waste of money.
Yeah, I agree.
If people phone and say, will you do that? Say, yep, absolutely we'll do it, because, I try and be accommodating. But, so the price for staging it for the first 2 months and then to go into a rolling contract after that is £5,000. But I only want it for photographs. Okay, yeah, that's fine. The price for staging it for photographs is £5,000.
Yeah.
Because actually the cost at our end, as you can imagine, is in the warehouse, getting it all together, getting it delivered, putting it in place, getting it all looking amazing. Once it's there, then the cost to us is relatively speaking less, because we're talking about now, having the furniture in situ. I haven't got people time in it.
So I wanted to ask you something kind of completely different, almost putting a lid on the industry stuff and having a different conversation. It's about the fact that you've written a book and you're writing another book.
I am.
Why have you done that?
Why? Heaven only knows, David, to be honest.
And there's a strategy in there somewhere.
Yeah, there's a strategy.
Tell me about the strategy.
David loves strategy.
Yeah.
He's a tactical man.
The strategy, I think, and it goes back to what you said right at the beginning of this, that I feel as though sometimes I've single-handedly dragged this industry into the public domain in this country.
I feel like you have. I don't know where you get the energy from.
Some days it feels like that. I think it's important to do it. For me, and the reason I think it's important, so my kind of purpose in it, if you like, is to make sure that every single seller gets the best advice to maximise their biggest capital asset. Now, the reason that that's important is because so many sellers that we deal with are selling because of other life circumstances. Now, they might be happy things, so they might be having a baby, for example, and they need a bigger property. They might be sad things. They might be divorce or bereavement. There are all kinds of reasons why people sell. But everybody that's selling has a dream. So mine, once I sell mine, is to sell it for as much as I possibly can and buy the biggest yacht I can and just clear off for a bit. And so that's why it's important. And getting the message out there is really hard when you're a small business in an industry that's not recognised, and you've got no huge marketing budget. We didn't have marketing budget that we could throw at television programmes or huge advertising campaigns or anything else. So you think, okay, well, what can I do to raise profile? And of course, one of the things that is still actually quite rarely done, even in business, is to just write down everything that you kind of do, write down what you think about. So for me, writing the book, the first one was about having a conversation with sellers that I have when I'm sitting in their kitchen. So basically talking about why staging is important, how property is marketed differently to the way that it was probably when they bought their property, because a lot of our sellers in the market that we are, which is very much premium market, mostly country, so mostly outside London, because we don't really deal with super prime. we're very much a sort of everything else market, kind of premium, but outside London. And so it's a conversation that I would have with the sellers about why they do it, since Rightmove, since Instagram, Facebook marketing, all the other things that have come into being. And it was talking about that, and also trying to debunk the myth of staging being an American fad, and getting the real kind of validity of it as a property marketing tool across to a seller, so that they start to go out and drive it. And of course, when you write a book, and then we've had a good PR team for the last 2 or 3 years as well, then people start to come and say, Elaine, will you come and talk to me? Come and be on our podcast. Come and talk to me about so-and-so. Come and speak on our stage. And I'll go, oh, that's exciting, because I like to get out of the office, and they don't really need
It's a really interesting thing to establish authority in your field, isn't it?
Yeah, and the next book that's partway through right now is not just about the staging. It brings in the photography. It talks about the use of video. It talks about the coming soon stuff, the Instagram, the social media marketing, all of that as well. Because I think that's not being, agents aren't talking about that enough. So I'm having the conversation that I believe agents should be having with their sellers, to allow then the sellers, and I was talking to somebody the other day who said, there needs to be a tick list of, and agents are going to hate me, but there's going to be a tick list of, these are the questions you should ask your agent. Well, what exactly are you going to do to market my property? Well, when's the coming soon video going out? When are you going to do, where are you going to post it? Blah, 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 all of these questions. So to give back the power, if you like, to sellers. So they're not just being asked to approve or not approve a really poor set of details.
If you don't mind me saying, it's a great strategy. It's a bit like Rightmove, isn't it, in some ways? Sorry, I'm not picking on Rightmove. So, but sellers go, well, my house needs to be on Rightmove, right? So it's that, well, if we haven't got that, then we're knackered, aren't we, as agents? Well, but anyway, we'll challenge that another day. But no, that's really interesting what you say about why you wrote the book. And I think it's about educational pieces for the agent's clients.
Because sellers are generally quite an unsophisticated group of people, because on average in this country people sell once every 10 years or whatever, and in our market it's probably even
longer.
less than that.
If you only do something one every 10-15 years, how good are you going to be at it?
Well, you're not going to be that good at it, and so much has moved on in the last 10, 15, 20 years, not just in property marketing, but in the world around us. And being able to tap into that to get the best marketing is really important.
Nearly every guest we talk about when they're agents is being different to the other agents. It's the bit that I think you have to seek out what can make you stand out from the crowd. And there's no better way, really, is there, than how you present a property. And I know that's quite I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of people in the premium market will go to an agent because of their presentation.
Because they're looking on their websites, on their on the brand websites.
They want my house to be presented that well.
But I want mine to look like that.
And I think, but what used to happen, certainly when I was listing a little while back, and I'd be up against a Savills or a Stratton Parker or Fine and Country, as you'd go, oh, wow, they do a great job of, back then, of launching property, the videos, the photography looks amazing. They get a lovely book of their home or whatever. And actually, what is more valuable to that client? What's really going to help them the most to actually achieve the maximum value? Because an estate agent's role is to maximize the value for the client.
Absolutely.
The client is the vendor, not the buyer. Sometimes it could be...
completely. And all of those strategies, the video, the photography, the nice book, and all of those things are completely wasted time and money unless the house looks right first.
True.
So I wanted to ask you about the book, because it was something that was a little bit off-piste, and about how maybe part of how you've been on a one-woman mission to drag the property industry into the world of staging and styling. But it's an interesting perspective of becoming a key person of influence in an industry that interested me. Right, final question.
And of course I met, just interrupting that, key person of influence, I met Daniel Priestley through one of the Fine and Country conferences.
Yeah, we had him on
very
stage.
Brilliant
speaker. Years ago.
Very
he's a fascinating guy.
Yeah, fascinating.
I didn't know that you met him there. That's really interesting. Okay, so the final question that we have is a ridiculous question, and nobody can leave the studio without answering it. So today you've been our guest, you've been our property porn star. Now everybody has a porn star name, whether they know it or not. And there's a very easy way of deducing what your porn star name is, and it is, well, I say this easy, I forget, your middle name, I'll get this one day, and your first pet's name. That's right. I'm giving yours. So what's your middle name and then your first pet's name?
Do you want my first middle name or my second middle name?
You choose the more ridiculous
What's the funniest one?
The more
We need a
ridiculous
funnier one.
Yeah.
Okay, so my second middle name is Bernice.
We're off to a
That's
good start.
Now,
That's
the
a good start, yeah.
reason
Strong.
for that is because the family name that comes down through the men's side is Bernal. And I was the first girl, and there was a fear that they wouldn't have boys. So I had to have what they regarded as the female adaptation of Bernal, which is Bernice.
Okay, so Bernice and the first pet?
Bernice, and my first pet was Panda.
Pretty good.
We're back.
Pretty good.
I think that's a
The
pretty
Bernice
good porn
Panda.
star name, don't you?
It's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Because I'm Kevin Tiny. So for those listening,
there
you know,
we
It
go.
frustrates me because it was the first podcast we did, and he took the title since then, and
and
no
no
one's
one's
beaten
beaten
it.
it. But I think you're
You've
right.
come closest.
Do you
In
think I'm
fact,
coming-
if you are subscribed, just put a comment. Which one would you like the most? Which one?
Let the people decide.
I
Brilliant.
just love being a porn star of any
Wow.
you know, as somebody said to me at 25, Elaine, you're 10 years too old.
Well, that bombshell, we'll end it there. Elaine, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
being on the
Thanks
podcast
so much.
today.
Thank you
That's been
so
a
much
really
for having me,
interesting
guys.
insight
Thank
into
you.
an industry that sits parallel alongside a state agency, but is so relevant and increasingly relevant for the premium
time.
property market. Thank you so much for sharing that. There are so many tactics, I think, especially in a market now where price is becoming an increasingly sensitive subject, that can be deployed by estate agents there. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you so much for listening or watching this episode of Property Porn Stars. We really appreciate it. If you could like, follow, subscribe, download, all those very good things, it would help us out enormously. And until then, we'll see you in the next one.
See you soon.